My name is Francis O'Hare, and I am Sustainable Technologies Ambassador with Techies Go Green. Welcome to this recording of our recent event at the Guinness Enterprise Centre here in Dublin with renowned environmentalist and author Paul Hawken. The event was attended by an online and in-room audience, and this is part one of two of our coverage of what was a really inspiring session with Paul, who is one of the most original voices in climate thinking and has recently returned to the global stage with new ideas in his book Carbon, the Book of Life. Paul Hawken is dedicated to reconnecting business and ecology. His work focuses on practical solutions for ecological regeneration and climate stability. He's appeared in publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Newsweek, and Forbes, and has authored 9 books, including 6 New York Times bestsellers. His latest book, Carbon, the Book of Life, explores carbon's essential role in life and offers a hopeful and holistic perspective on restoring balance to the planet. This is also one of the first times Paul talks about his latest project, the Alliance for Earth, a project he's been developing quietly behind the scenes. Before we start, I would like to thank our sponsor, Quinto Join, for enabling us to host Paul and other great speakers on climate action and environmental issues. I hope you enjoy this video, and please do stay tuned for part 2. I suppose onto what we're here to talk about mostly today, your new book, Carbon, the Book of Life. And it is a little bit different from some of your other books in that it's not focused necessarily directly on solutions per se, like Drawdown was and Regeneration was. And maybe just to kick things off, for those who haven't read it yet, would you mind giving us a very brief synopsis of it and maybe why you wrote it?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, the backstory is that I had proposed this book to Penguin Random House 11 years ago.
Wow.
And then I decided I wanted to do Drawdown, which is a nonprofit and so forth. And they said, okay, we'll go do that, but then do Carbon. And I said, okay. And then when I got to the end of Drawdown, I said, there's one more book I've got to do. It's called Regeneration. And they said, they were like, come on. And then, so a year and a half ago, they said, they kept renewing the contract, which is to their credit. I mean, I must say, every year they renewed it. In the 10th year, they said, either send it in within a year or we're just going to cancel the contract. So that's the book I wrote. And it actually had almost nothing to do with the original proposal. And I think those 10 years really influenced me as to how people perceive the problem, where we are. And also, I feel like with Drawdown, I don't want to take credit. It's going to sound like I'm taking credit. I'm not. But before Drawdown, and I had proposed Drawdown for years before I wrote the book and got the organization together. And what I noticed in 2001 is that people were talking about the problem, for sure, scientists, universities, pretty small coterie of people, environmentalists, but there's no solutions. Nobody's talking about solutions, okay, what to do. And the Union of Concerned Scientists, which is a very prestigious organization, said, use cold water in your washing machine and put a power strip in your home entertainment center. It's like, and I'm going, what? I mean, it was just so like, what are you thinking? These are scientists. And so that's when I began to go around and saying to universities and NGOs and other organizations, we should do a book of solutions. In other words, people don't know what to do. They literally had no idea what to do, which sounds silly now, but that was not silly 20 some odd years ago. And 24 years ago is when I first started talking about that. And so that's how Drawdown emerged, because I kept saying it for 12, 13 years. And then I said, well, I'm going to do it. And I didn't know how to do it, by the way. And that's why I reached out around the world to get sort of researchers from all 6 continents, you can imagine the different countries. It was really an international effort, of really brilliant people, usually docs or postdocs and things like that. And then I would bring it in, I would rewrite them or take what they had and write it as a solution. And that's why I say edited on the book, because I felt like I wanted everybody to get credit. I didn't want to just see Paul Hawken, author. And of course, that book did very well. It still does well. I mean, it's in, I think, 18 countries. I don't know how many countries it's in. And it was taught from everywhere, from grammar school to MIT. And there's an organization, Project Drawdown, which still exists. But that's how that came about. But the book Carbon then was, in between there was Regeneration. You showed the cover. It says ending the climate crisis in one generation. Let's talk about that subtitle for a minute, because it's in one generation, you're not changing the earth. That's what industry is trying to do now. And we're not trying to do that. It's changing the way we see the earth, the way we act, the way we look at the climate crisis. Because the first thing I want to say is the climate cannot have a crisis. That's impossible. And the climate is a direct expression of the biosphere.
Yeah.
And there is a crisis here. It's us. So ending the climate crisis in one generation is for the world to wake up and say, we have a problem. Let's talk. Let's work together. Let's cooperate. Let's act in our best interest, that is humanity. What a thought. And do so. And that's when the climate crisis ends, because the crisis goes to where it belongs, which is what we do, what we make, what we take, how we act, our legislation, our schooling systems, et cetera, et cetera. So the crisis rests within humanity's institutions and beliefs and politics. And so regeneration was certainly activities that you can do. And that was, how can you literally create more life on Earth? I mean, that's what regeneration means, regenerate life. Yeah. And so it was there. Carbon arose because what I see, and I'm sure you see it as well, but everywhere when you read sort of whether it's The Guardian or FT or Telegraph or whatever you read, I mean, they're always referring to decarbonization, carbon offsets, carbon this, carbon this, carbon that, carbon that, as if carbon was the problem.
Yeah, the bad guy. Yeah.
Yeah, the bad guy. Yeah, the bad guy. And we have to fix it. And that's a very, with all due respect to my gender, a very male way of seeing the world. And not only fix it, but it was like tackle, combat, fight climate change. You see the fight, and it's like, and from my point of view, that way of seeing the world and thinking about the world, what caused the problem. It's the cause. It's the fundamental cause of where we are today, and that is objectifying. So men, with very few exceptions, have had a very good track record of objectifying women. So almost every woman in the world, I'm sure, knows what it's like to be objectified. Okay. We've objectified other cultures and continue to do so. Certainly when the settlers came to America, what we did to the 550 different cultures that were in Turtle Island were just decimated and so forth. We objectify forests, seas, animals. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It's the living world. And we are extracting, taking, of course, all this, but that's objectification and so forth. And so for me, what I wanted to write about carbon in a way that actually was a window into its beauty, its extraordinary quality. It's the only element that has memory and stores energy, without which there'd be no life anywhere. So it's not just like sodium, carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen. It's like, no. Carbon is a standalone in that sense. And and again, I feel like we have oversimplified the problem and the solutions, and when in fact, a single cell in your body, has 1.2 trillion atoms of carbon. So this idea of decarbonization, I was like, well, hold on.
Where do we go?
Yeah, I mean, and your cell is more complex than anything humanity has remotely created or understood. The single cell in terms of being a complex adaptive system, that emerged 330 million years ago. So I kind of want to expand it to the breadth and depth and the beauty and the problems too, but of how we perceive the living world and what we're doing and what we could do instead and so forth. So yeah, it's not meant as like a solution book, as a pointer, like, it's a sign like Dublin's that way, not that way.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple, really. And that way, Dublin in this case, I mean, is really about the exalting of life, the honoring of life. And that means people, children, cultures. And I don't mean just, abstract Amazon forests and headwaters. I mean, that too, but the whole banana, the whole tamale, everything that we touch and engage in and take and share wants to be honored.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things, being, I suppose, a technologist and working with a lot of technologists in the past, I noted one, obviously comment from your book, and that was that, and I quote, industries see the climate crisis as an engineering problem, not a crisis of behavior, consumption, or disconnection. And yes, but do you still believe that technology, scientific solutions still play a part in, the future of trying to not fix, but make things better?
Absolutely. And I can give you two examples. One where I think technology is completely off the rails and couldn't be stupider for climate tech, okay? And one where it's brilliant and it's like, civilization changing. So they're both technologies, okay? The first one that gets the dunce cap, is direct air capture, which is, these extraordinary machines that are sucking in the atmosphere, air, and capturing, CO2, 4 parts per 10,000, capturing that, and then separating the C from the O, and then the C gets liquefied, and then and then it's pumped in pipelines, sometimes far away, into I guess I don't know what to call them, but I mean, just and pump 5,000 feet down in the earth.
Yeah.
And you say, now we've captured this carbon, and somehow we're going to make a difference. Well, as we all learned in ninth grade or whatever grade we learned it in, we learned about the first and second law of thermodynamics, even if it wasn't named that, which is this, and one of those is energy only goes one way. It doesn't go opposite. It can't reverse itself. And so the amount of energy it takes to capture carbon, which is again a very male kind of way of looking at the atmosphere. I got it. Now we're gonna wrestle it into and put it, in jail down beneath. But that idea itself is then it functions by these huge machines and huge amount of energy that's used. And so what we know, and I don't want to get too technical, but I mean, the greenhouse gases that are emitted by the combustion of coal, gas, and oil is what's called entropy. It's the waste. It's the ash, so to speak. It's not ash in the sense of our fireplace, but it is the ash. It's what happens when you burn something, you combust, you get something that is of lesser value in terms of its energy. Okay, so now you have direct air capture, which uses an extraordinary amount of energy to do what it just did, what I described. So what you have is intelligent people gathering billions of dollars to use entropy to fix entropy.
Right.
Well, I mean, even I could figure that one out in ninth grade, which is like, well, that won't work. I mean, because so that's direct air capture, and it has captured, Bill Gates and all sorts of other people who are very, very smart. I don't question their intelligence, but I mean, can we just go back to ninth grade, everybody, and talk about that, or seventh grade, really? But now in the book, I talk about Bucky and Bang.
Yes.
There's a chapter called Bucky and Bang.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Bucky is Buckminster Fuller. and the other guy is Lingbing Hu, who's a Chinese inventor, and Bucky Fuller, and he both, to me, are outstanding in the way they see the world. They created things, but it's because they see the world differently first. It's not because so did Nikola Tesla. I mean, there's certainly other people. They're not the only ones, but it comes from seeing what other people didn't see or don't see or ignored. And in the case of Bing, he was a gifted child in China, and so they take them out of school and put him in different schools and put him through a very accelerated educational experience. And 17, I think he graduated from university, and then he got his PhD when he was 20 at UCLA in nanotechnology. Then he did his postdoc in Stanford. Okay. And then he went to University of Maryland, and now he's at Yale. But one of the things he did was, being an expert in nanotechnology, for some reason, I don't know why, but he took some cellulose, which is in every plant, tree, fiber, whatever, and looked at it under electron microscope. Just a single cellulosic fiber, which is really almost invisible to our eye.
Yes. Yeah.
And he said he noticed it's structured exactly like carbon fiber.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously spiralic.
Yeah.
Of course, that's the strongest structure there is. And so then he tested it for strength, a single cellulosic fiber, and it's stronger than carbon fibers. And that was like, whoa, wait a minute. He spent 10 years with government grants from DARPA, ARPA, DOD, and National Science Foundation, and so forth, studying how to take advantage of that, and then make use of that fact. And he did, and he came up finally with, and I have this. I'll show you. This is,
oh wow,
yeah, there it is. It's called Superwood. I don't know if I like the brand name, but anyway, from a company called Invent Wood, and you can go online and there's a lot of information about it. But what's interesting about it is, I'll hold two things. Okay, this is steel, right?
Yeah.
This is Invent Wood, right? And they're both the same length and width and so forth. Okay, so I'll put it back up at it, because the wood, is 50% stronger than steel. Okay, second of all, it's 1/6 the weight. Okay, third, it doesn't burn. It's fireproof.
Yeah.
This, at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, will lose its tensile strength and collapse.
Yes.
Okay, so now that is in production today, and starting in production at a factory. So that's technology. So the question is, technology to what end, and so forth. I mean, this is 9% of global emissions, right? And this can be made from bamboo, right? Which is a grass. And so I'm not for technology. Came from weaving. It's the root is weaving things together. Understanding how and really technology, to the degree it understands how the world is exquisitely woven together, right? And then saying, how can I participate, intercede, get involved with this to make it even more intricately helpful to creatures on Earth? I'm a creature, all creatures, whether they're insects or whether they're in the sea. So technology in that sense is extraordinary. There's always been, people have always done technologies. And so I'm not for technology, I'm not against it. I'm for techniques, and ideas and companies that actually make a big difference. Yeah.
I suppose it's like all things, technology is a tool in the right or wrong hands.
Right.
Splitting the atom gives us energy. It also gives us other bad things. AI could give us great things, but it could also, and it is giving us bad things. So
yeah,
absolutely. Maybe before we plow on with any more of these questions, we might open up.
Yeah, actually, I'll just come in on that as well. So, Paul, I actually just returned a couple of months ago from hiking in South Korea. And I was there for a couple of weeks. It's an amazing country. From where it came from in the 1960s, was one of the poorest countries in the world, to one of the most economic success stories in the world today. And as we drove down the peninsula, you see the high-rise cities in the mountains. You're driving on motorways with tunnels going through the mountains, and the technology is just amazing. But as we were trekking on the various mountains, it was very noticeable the lack of birds, the lack of pollinators, insects. It was eerily quiet. Like, it was beautiful, but it was quiet. And certainly, it's my belief that it's their economic development has been at the cost of their nature. And my question really is, how can countries and companies continue to grow economically, but bring nature along with it? And I suppose the second question is, measuring things like GDP for countries that's seen as the gold standard. Can we continue to just focus on that without bringing nature into the equation?
I work backwards. Good question, by the way. Very good. But you use the word equation. And nature is not a math problem. Sorry. And I know what you mean. So I'm not criticizing the use of the word so much as I'm saying. But the way you ask the question is actually what, because when I was saying, how can we bring nature into the equation, okay? Well, wait a minute. Nature is ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in your body. It's in your breath. It's, it's underneath your fingernails. It's like nature is everywhere. Yeah. Now, have we become very good at exterminating it, making it impossible to exist? Yes, in certain areas. Yeah, we're very good at that. And that comes from those high-rise that you see, which is cement, steel, electricity, and everything that's in it, and plastic, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And so we're very, very good at that. Where we're not good at is actually meeting human needs in a way that actually takes advantage of the living world. Advantage means that is nurtured by it, that is fed by it, that is helped by it. And that's why, I said this, this is 25 million acres of bamboo can replace all the steel in the world. And that means all the coal and all the shipping and all, it goes on and on and on. And so we have to think about how can we build or continue to build a civilization that may not really deserve that name anymore, but build a civilization that actually does the opposite of what it's doing. What you described is a civilization that destroys life on Earth. So regeneration is saying, well, that doesn't work, but we have to take care of ourselves and people and so forth, no question. How do we do it in such a way that it creates more life instead of less? All right. Because interesting, at the DMZ, I don't know if you got that close to it,
I didn't. No, it didn't go to DMZ.
Okay, well, you can look over the fence or whatever it is. But it is one of the most diverse places biologically in the world. Because nobody's been there. It's 4 miles wide, I forget, And if it wasn't mined, scientists would love to get in there. They can see the binoculars and the pollinators and everything. So there's an irony, about the DMZ between North and South Korea, and then what each country is doing to its environment. So I think that, Techies Go Green, well, exactly. What does that mean, to go green? To me, is to sort of do that figure ground shift, okay? Which is the ground is the living world. Now, how do we stay here? How do we be here? How do we raise our children? How do we, be healthy? Which we are not in the United States. I don't know, but Ireland, we are so sick, it's ridiculous. In terms of, and so we have huge industries, which are sickness industries. We don't have a health system here. We have a pathology system, human pathology. So So those questions, your questions are really the right question. And we have to look at that from all different perspectives, where we have care, where we have knowledge, where we have interest, curiosity. How do we, and we do it step by step. And it's not like you can create something that's going to change, South Korea. But you're in Ireland and you can look at it where you are, what's happening, understanding that people are effective where they are. They're not so effective where they're not. And so in terms of solving or really transforming systems, economic systems, so that ecological and economic are actually the same word in some ways, is something that you start at home. You do it. You learn, you teach, you share, you expand, you get ideas, you imagine, and out it goes. And so that's why I told the story of being, which is just about imagination, really.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. So we are, as a race, so caught up in making money, and that's the focus. Keep the costs down, and like, where is this going to end? Do you have a sort of a view on that? Because it's so difficult to change that mindset.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Earth is giving feedback, and if that continues, there won't be a human civilization, because it's eating. It's eating its. What do you want to call it? The world. It's eating the Earth. It's destroying the Earth, destroying living systems, and so I mean, just like you said, you didn't see any insects and so forth, and off to South Korea. I mean, we don't know, 60 to 70%, depends where, but the pollinators are gone. They've been poisoned, or they don't have plants that they can feed on. And we know from E.O. Wilson, the foremost entomologist in the world at Harvard, you get that 3-4% pollinators, and the Earth regresses 1 billion years. It just dies. And it's like, so, and does the chemical industry have the world in an arm lock about, if you don't use pesticides, people will starve? I mean, they're using fear and other things to justify, poisoning the world. So that's the culture we're in. And I'll go back to you. I don't know what you can do about the world. I don't know what you can do about people, in Brazil or, Hungary or Zambia. I have no idea. But I do know that when you have to think about where you are and what's happening there in Ireland, and the belief in money is understandable. Of course, we all have to live, buy food, pay the rent or whatever. And so, that's the nub of the problem. But the question is, where are we making the money? How are we making the money? And that's really, what is the money, and that we are using? And if you just pull the string on the flour bag, it goes all the way back to extraction and destruction. And so that's what regeneration is about, saying, we all know that. Everyone in the room knows this. I'm not saying anything novel. But what we have to do is have this moment where we say, I'm looking down, and you said it, down this road. Every headline, everything I see, everything I'm told, and so forth, pretty much is about degeneration. If you really read between the lines, it's about degeneration. The loss of life, the loss of living system, the loss of people, the increase in disease, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So for the first time, maybe, I don't know when, but I mean, right now, you can see it. You can see it. That road does not go much further. And that's what you're saying. It doesn't go very far. So now this is the pivot. This is the 180, was look the other way. It doesn't mean you're going to stop paying your mortgage tomorrow. Just look the other way. What does the world look like that actually creates more life in the process of meeting human needs? I don't know. I have some ideas. I write about some of them in Carbon, but in our regeneration. But so that's what the world has to turn towards. Is asking the question: And it doesn't mean it becomes, it's not a virgin birth overnight, like it's all roses, and it's a direction. And that's the direction we have to go. And it's a direction that's based on care and compassion, imagination, right? And those qualities are actually innate to human beings. There's a lot of really good things about human beings, even though they're screwing up. So that's the only way I can respond to that question is just do the best you can. Yeah.